And welcome everybody. Let me put the banner up. What was it saying? Oh no, that's the wrong one. Apologies, wrong episode. Always a good start. I did change this. There we go. Okay, so welcome everybody. Obviously, it is Discussing the Brand episode 4. Obviously, I'm joined by AJ again. So apologies. Obviously, we had to put this back. Unfortunately, life gets in the way, and obviously it meant to be last week. It's been a little while, but yeah. So today's episode is discussing the brand for DC. So this is the company known as DC Comics now. It originally started back in the 30s it went through quite an amalgamation of stuff. If people know roughly the ins and outs, so it was a few gentlemen's kind of comic strip trying to get a bit more professional. There were some hints of link to gangsters and stuff in the original ones, and then there was I've got his name written down so I can remember. So Malcolm Wheeler Nicholson, he was the pioneer basically for DC. He was, I believe, in the army before that, and kind of came forwards to these two gentlemen and suggested the way they should go with their comic brand and superheroes or fighting crime vigilante type. That's where they started. And then obviously in 1937, I believe, they had Detective Comics, which was their first ever iteration of a comic under the DC line. And then obviously Joe Shuster and Jerry Siegel joined to obviously get Superman, and then we had Batman, Wonder Woman, and that's what then started the golden age of DC Comics. And then, as we know, they've then gone into TV, movies, and anything and everything else. So that's just kind of a gist overall of what it is. So I know we're a bit poorly planned in this episode, but I say the first thing I wanted to kind of start off with is kind of each of us will go through maybe how we came across DC and what has kind of been our connection to the DC universe as it is, and not just DC universe movies, but DC as a whole. Would you like to go first, AJ, or I can go? It's entirely up to you.
No, that's all right. Well, I'm glad that you've done your homework first off and gave us all that, because I haven't done nothing. I've done preparation whatsoever beyond what I know up here.
Yeah.
And yeah, that wasn't that earlier stuff, that's for sure. But yeah, so what really, I don't really, do you know what? That's a really tough question to answer in the sense of what got me into DC. It's more a case of what got me into comics. Do you know what I mean? Because DC was just a part of that. I think definitely I'm more a Marvel person than DC person, but there has been times when I was heavily into DC, and I think that would have been during the 90s more so than anything, around the times of Death of Superman, Batman Nightfall, things like that, when every single Batman comic, including Catwoman and Robin comics, were all interlinked and you had to buy every single one. But yeah, so obviously my comic reading started at a young age with UK comics like Dandy and Beano. That's where my comic, and then it sort of then went into sort of like the UK comics of Transformers, which was in part, you know, you had Transformers and you had backup as well, which might be Spider-Man or something like that. And then you had Zoids. I know, had Spider-Man. And my brothers, or one of my brothers, he had a few comics, not many, just a little box full of comics with things like Eagle's first issue of Judge Dredd in there. It had some of the older Ghost Rider comics in there, and I read them. And in there was a paper bag with the Forbidden Planet on it, Forbidden Planet from there. And I said to my dad, now I was only young, I said, I want to go here. I want to go to this shop. So we went up into London, he took me, and we couldn't find it because it had shut down. It was on Denmark Street, which is a road synonymous with music, which is very close to where Forbidden Planet is now. But there was another comic shop on there up this little alleyway, tiny little comic shop. Squeeze in there, but they had loads, and going through all the long boxes. And on my second trip up there, I decided to look for Forbidden Planet again, and went into the shop where it was, and there was a poster saying, "Oh, it's moved around the corner onto New Oxford Street," which was its second location, and it just sort of began from there. And then, as a kid, from the age of about 11, I worked in a pet shop down in a place called Herne Hill, and just by chance, a comic shop opened down there as well, called Adventure Into Comics. So any money that I earned from my little pet shop job, I was around there as well. And DC just came into it. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, Superman comics, there's Batman comics, as well as reading the Marvel stuff. But as time went on, I did sort of gravitate more towards... it was more towards the Marvel stuff, but DC's still been very prominent, just not as much. You tend to go one way or the other, you know.
Yeah. No, that's fine. I mean, I'm very much like you. I mean, I didn't get into comics until I was 13. My dad bought me home some comics. He bought me Mutant Massacre for the X-Men. Helena, if anybody knows what Helena is, for a 13-year-old to get that is quite and the tick. So but for me personally, I have some stories to go with this. So I'm told as a child, or one of the earliest, as a few-year-olds, I always wanted to jump on the back of the sofa to be Superman. So being born in the 80s, it must have been Christopher Reeve Superman, because that was the only kind of major influence of that being out there. As I then grew up, obviously in the 90s, as my teens, I started to become aware it was probably more like the Batman the animated series, and obviously the Batman movies, even though I was a little too young to see them. And then obviously like the Adventures of Lois and Clark, and that was kind of
Superman,
the Superman and Lois Lane. Like those were kind of my jumping on points, and obviously I did like the movies, but I kind of wasn't into the comics until like my 20s. So we're talking the early 2000s, and my friend Matt, he basically kind of was like, "Oh, you like Marvel, you like the Avengers, you like this stuff, you'll really, really like this stuff." And he lent me this. I've got some aids. So and this was kind of my jumping on point, and ever since reading that,
that's Michael Turner cover, isn't it?
I believe so. Yeah, it's the hard, but yeah, it is. Looking at the, yeah.
See, I do know my artists to a degree.
Yeah, I'm rubbish. Like it's like directors. Like I know actors and actresses and stuff. But yeah, when it comes to like writers and directors and everything else, I struggle like anybody.
Now, Michael Turner's got quite a distinctive
style. Didn't he do Witchblade?
And Fathom as well. Yeah.
So that was kind of my kind of jumping on point. And then obviously as I've got older and expanded my movie lines and stuff, I've got into it. A bit like you, I get Batman. I think that's the only comic kind of monthly I get from DC.
I'll be honest, I don't get Batman. I don't really get much anymore from DC.
Okay.
At this current moment in time, I felt burnt. I started to feel very burnt out on Batman a little while ago, around the time of the Batman. And I dropped a lot of comics. So the only DC Batman titles I really get now are the animated one, The Adventures Continue, and Batman Beyond.
Okay, yeah.
Stuff, because it's separate to standard Batman. Do you know what I mean? I had this burnout on Batman because, every bloody film is Batman. Every TV show that comes is Batman. You just can't get away from the guy. There's no break. No. But there we go. Sorry.
No. Yeah, ain't got to be so. Yeah, no. I understand it. So,
and I've got a couple of Batman bit series. Everything I've got here is Batman as well.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, it is like, as you say, the hype. There is Batman everywhere, and obviously, like with McFarlane toys and everything. So, I'm on his head. So, there's loads of these figures out and stuff. So, all good stuff.
Yeah, no. It's see, it's funny when you ask that question. How did I get into DC? You see how my mind didn't go towards it went straight to the comics and not the the film or the TV side of it.
No, that's what I thought it would be for you. In all fairness,
But I did, obviously I grew up with Christopher Reeve as Superman. Great film. Still love it today. But there wasn't, back in them days, comic book adaptations, comic book TV, comic book movies were few and far between. You didn't get them.
Yeah, no.
They were a pipe dream, weren't they? As a comic book collector and a comic book reader, these things were just unfilmable, really. Obviously you had Batman in the 80s, you had your Superman films, but beyond that, Marvel couldn't get nothing off the ground.
No, it was a TV series for Marvel, wasn't it? It was like the Incredible Hulk, kind of, and then that really bad Spider-Man. I'm trying to think of what the actor's name now is, with the curly hair. Which I watched as a child. But they weren't good. And then Marvel obviously done their films like, you had the story of the Fantastic Four that went nowhere. That was only a made to retain the rights, never intent to be released. Marvel also done, the Captain America film. Yeah. Matt Salinger, which to be fair, I can watch and enjoy. I don't think it's a bad film, but I have a lot of love for it in a sense. But DC, as a comic book reader, this stuff was like, you couldn't even imagine having the Avengers or the Justice League. It was just undoable, not until the effects caught up to where they needed to be for them to give them justice. Yeah, for want of a better term. I know. Because there was a Justice League TV film as well, wasn't there? Yes, have not seen it, but I know of it. Very cheesy, like Brady Bunch, I would say. It
had no Superman. No Superman was there. No Batman was there. The Flash was there. He was probably the most recognisable character.
Yeah. Aquaman, Atom. It was the Atom.
I can't remember. I have seen it, but it's been a long, long time. I only ever watched it once. But there we go.
I say it's an interesting concept because if you take everything that's been out there past and up till today, I mean, I would always say DC have always been better at TV than movies overall.
I'd say I agree.
Like the animated stuff is quite good. Obviously Smallville is the longest running, I think, superhero TV series ever with 10 seasons. Closest is
Flash only hit 9, didn't it?
And it's only 9.5. Obviously we did have an earlier Flash series which didn't last that great, but obviously they got to run it. I just think they've always done well. I mean, the movies for me, I have liked bits here and there, but they've always kind of playing catch up to what Marvel have, and I think that's been part of their problem. Like they've seen what Marvel have done, and I think Marvel fluked it a bit. They were lucky that Iron Man did so well. Then they threw the little, obviously, cameo into the Avengers with Samuel L. Jackson. And, it was just the right time, the right place, the right people, and it all worked. And then DC were like, well, if Marvel can do it, we can. And I think that caused a lot of problems, like with the first Suicide Squad and stuff. People were just like, oh, it's the best movie ever and all this stuff. And I'm like, you're not doing it because you love something. And that's where stuff shines out, I think, especially with comics and stuff. You need to really love the character.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with Marvel, they took their time, didn't they? They took their time with it, seeding stuff, and it all worked for them, seeding this world. They didn't even announce that they were doing a shared universe or anything like this. It came off the back of, a little tease at the end of Iron Man, and slowly it built. But DC wanted that from the get-go, and they were about 8 years too late.
Yeah.
They had to wait for you had the Batman trilogy, the Dark Knight, Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, which hands down is one of the best superhero trilogies ever. I won't or comic book trilogies ever. I won't knock that. Even Dark Knight Rises, I know it gets a lot of stick. I understand why it gets a lot of stick, and I also understand why, in psychologically, why it gets a lot of stick. And that's because they had nowhere to go.
Yeah.
They backed. Unfortunately, they were a victim of their own success, Christopher Nolan and the Dark Knight trilogy, because after the second one, the death of Heath Ledger and all that stuff, they had nowhere to go but down.
Yeah.
After that film, and they knew that themselves. They knew, you know, I don't believe ever that it was originally meant to be a trilogy. If they could have got a fourth one out of it, they would have got a fourth one out of it. But after that second one hit the heights that it did, a conversation was had, and they said, "What do we do now?" Because we've got this film here that's everyone adores. It's, you know, a fantastic film. We can't better it. We can't. What are we going to do now? Your only options is to continue with a downward, not necessarily a downward spiral of take-ins, because obviously Dark Knight Rises done wonderful, but a downward spiral in quality, which did happen with Dark Knight Rises. You know, it is a flawed film. There are flaws to it. It's the weakest of the three, most definitely, but they you know, and if you've done a fourth one, you're going to look at a decline even more, and possibly in take-ins as well. So we've only got one decision, and that is to finish this, close off this film series, give it an ending. That's the only way it's going to work, is by giving an end to it at this point, because they backed themselves into a corner. But I mean, I ain't got a problem with the film. It's just a fine film for me, but it's I do see it as the weakest of the three.
Okay, cool. We're getting a few questions, but I'll let's see what. Cool, got one up. Morning, Yam. Yeah, thanks. I'm all right for a Sunday. Nice long bank holiday weekend. So
yeah, I'm good. Tired. I just got up.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they backed themselves into it. And then they tried rushing it. They tried rushing stuff with you know, okay, let's look at it like this. This is what I see happen with DC, right? The Batman trilogy comes to an end. They're watching Marvel release these films, because what was Superman? If I remember, Man of Steel was what, 2015, 2014, something like that, off the top of my head.
Look, 2013. So you were close.
Okay, all right. So you've got 5 years have passed.
Yeah.
I believe that was probably the same sort of year as what the Avengers came out, maybe.
What was it? 10 years of Avengers was last year or the year before, maybe. Yeah, around that. It's got to be around.
Yeah. So then DC try and recapture the Dark Knight in Man of Steel.
Okay.
That's what they try and do, because Man of Steel is very much influenced by the grounded reality of the Dark Knight trilogy. They tried to ground it, make it more realistic. Fair enough. But then the film went on to make something in the region of, and I'm only guessing numbers here, $650 million worldwide. Yeah. DC are not happy with that at all. They're not happy, because they want to be looking a lot higher for take-ins. Although any film to make $650 million worldwide is do you know what I mean? That's fantastic. Yeah. But no, it's not enough for them. So then it comes to Man of Steel 2. And again, you got to remember, this stuff isn't planned, right? The only reason that we got Batman versus Superman is because DC wanted that money. Yeah. DC wanted that money, right? So they thought to themselves, if we don't do a Man of Steel 2, which is the next logical move, which will likely earn less than Man of Steel 1, which ain't earned the money we want it to earn, we're going to play our ace card. Our ace card being Batman. You know, the last 3 Batman films, or the last 2 Batman films, have earned over $1 billion. If we join these 2 characters together, we're guaranteed $1 billion movie. So that's the only reason Batman got thrown into Superman 2 and became Batman versus Superman. At which point, The film went on to gross somewhere in the region of $850 million. Again, a fantastic take for any film, but DC are not happy, or Warner Brothers are not happy, because these are, you know, and you've thrown Wonder Woman in the mix as well. This is a holy trinity of characters from DC, and you're not breaking $1 billion, which is what Marvel are now doing with Avengers, and followed by Iron Man 3 of all characters. You know, a B-list Iron Man, a B-list Marvel character. Essentially, you've got the top 3 DC characters, and you can't break $1 billion. This then obviously led them into Justice League, which was far too soon for them to do Justice League. And then all the crap that went on behind the scenes with that one. And Justice League goes on to essentially bomb. And that's their Avengers. That's their Avengers. And all because they're rushing it, because they think that we can throw all these characters into Justice League and then we'll do it the opposite way round to Marvel and spin movies out of them. But Marvel set this stuff up slowly and introduced you to these characters in snippets, and sprinkled things in to then give you.
That's what, No. I mean, I've looked before, and it's very interesting on Marvel. There is nothing that I can find online that tells you when Nick Fury's scene was shot at the beginning of Iron Man 1. So I'm like, did they make this film, test it to audience, and people went, oh, we really, really like it. They got really, really positive accents. And I'm like, well, let's just throw a little scene in at the end, see what it gets. As you kind of said, it probably wasn't even planned. They probably didn't even think it could come about. We were like, let's just sprinkle it. Let's just see what people's reactions were. And there were so many people. Well, I was in the cinema when Nick Fury came out. Everyone was like, oh my god! And obviously Samuel L. Jackson, and obviously getting a bit off that. But people who don't know, obviously his likeness was the inspiration for the ultimate version of Nick Fury. Right. So the fact that they got
Brian Hitch, I think it was, wasn't it? Yeah.
So for that, and kind of to go to AJ, they take their time. So the little like nuances that they use across the way. And DC were rushing it, even though I do like Man of Steel and that. But I'm somebody, as you've probably seen between mine and AJ's reviews and stuff, I like quite a lot of stuff that AJ does and vice versa. So,
Man of Steel is a solid film. I don't think it's particularly a good interpretation of Superman. And this shows, this is the thing that shows DC's. This is like DC knocking video. DC have done a lot wrong. I'm not going to deny that. Right now, I like Man of Steel. Although I am open to admitting that it's not the best interpretation of Superman. And I'm not knocking Henry Cavill. I'm talking about in the writing of the character, not Henry Cavill's performance as Superman, although it's very moody. I enjoy Batman versus Superman, right? Although, again, heavily flawed film. I'll come into that. But I think that Zack Snyder's Justice League, for me, cemented those two films as better. As in, I watched that and then it elevates them. That being said, Superman 2 made cardinal sin of trying to adapt two, if not three. I know two. I know we'll talk of a third in there, but at least two fantastic graphic novel series. That being The Death of Superman and The Dark Knight Returns. Are both mixed into that film. Now, these are two storylines that deserve movies of their own.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, I don't believe, in watching Batman versus Superman, I don't believe that Superman has cemented himself enough as the world savior or anything like this at that juncture to warrant killing him off. By which I mean, I know Superman as a character, but without that knowledge, if you're watching Superman, Man of Steel, and this is your first, nothing. I know this is, I'm playing devil's advocate here, and I know this ain't the case, but if you could imagine watching that film without having any knowledge of Superman or who he is, then watching Batman versus Superman, and then caring that he dies, You wouldn't.
Mm.
Because you haven't got to know him yet. He hasn't deserved, in the writing aspect, he hasn't deserved that death.
Yeah.
And what comes from it. Now, in my mind, if I'd structured DC, I would have made that, I would say, the second Justice League film.
Yeah.
I would have surrounded it around the death of Superman. And then not, and then the next thing they do is at the end of the film, this is how impatient they are, is at the end of the Batman versus Superman, they have to show you that quick shot of the dirt rising.
Yeah.
It's like, you've just killed him. You want me to be upset or emotional that you've killed him, and yet 10 minutes later, 15 minutes later, however long it is, you're now showing me, hold on a minute, he's not dead.
Yeah.
Something's going on there. He's not dead. You can't even commit to that.
No,
do you know what I mean?
No. I think I mentioned it in one of my previous videos. Like, I hate the fact of when they're like, well, we'll kill somebody off, but we all know you're coming back anyway. I say, and as you said, they just haven't spent the time to associate with the character. It's just wasted. It's just that whole thing is just a moot point, in my opinion.
Yeah, it renders it. It renders it. That doing even that. I mean, other things. A lot of films do this. Not to go on a tangent, but Star Trek Nemesis, they killed Data off,
yeah.
And then at the end, you find out that Data's mind could potentially be in this another Data android, thus rendering the sacrifice and death a moot point, which is exactly what Batman versus Superman does. At that juncture, and it is a story that's deserved of its own big grandiose thing. But you needed Superman to be at a point where you're like, you care that this geezer has died. You got to remember, you've come out of Man of Steel, where no one knows who Superman is. He's just partly wrecked Metropolis in this battle with Zod, inevitably killing loads and loads of people, and then you start us off in Batman versus Superman with, okay, I know there's stuff going on around him and the cult stuff and all this, but there's also people who think he is a savior, but we as an audience haven't been treated to that. No. We haven't been given that Superman.
I say, Matt's V Movies from his holiday. Morning, Matt.
Hi, Matt. How you doing? But yeah, so I know I'm knocking.
No, it's I say they're not. It's DC, as we know, is responsible for a lot of stuff, and as me and you know, of reading the comics and stuff like that, they reuse a lot of stuff, and there's only so far you can go, and nothing's ever going to be perfect sometimes, which is what is the case. I mean, for me, I really like Man of Steel, but I like it. Or my favorite actor from this, Russell Crowe, and I really like the first half an hour on Krypton. For me, that's what sold this movie to me, because it was. I know, obviously, everybody loves Marlon Brando in the originals and his Jor-El and that, but I just liked this version. We got to see more fleshing out of it, and that to me kind of cements a little bit to you, because we saw more of Krypton, and then obviously the last hour is kind of Superman, and obviously it's Superman growing up. And I did like as he's jumping through the cornfields and saves the school bus. I did like those bits. Yeah, you won't. How long? Probably 40 minutes of Superman, maybe we would have got out of this film, technically.
Yeah, but that's. I don't have a problem with that. I mean, I don't get me wrong. I like Man of Steel.
Yeah,
I like the Zack Snyder. I hate the Snyderverse. I hate the term Snyderverse. Yeah. I like the Zack Snyder trilogy, shall we say?
Yeah,
and I think that I mean. Like I said, Zack Snyder's Justice League, I think it's really good. I love it. Masterpiece, yeah. And it elevates what came before as well. But at the same time as liking them, I can be critical enough to say that you haven't written Superman properly. He's not like how Superman should be, and you've taken the chance and ruined a couple of what could have been fantastic films by giving us Death of Superman mixed with Dark Knight Returns. Doomsday was over and done with in minutes.
Yeah.
And Doomsday coming from Zod, all that stuff. That's, I mean, you can't even do that. Don't even want to give us that properly for the fans. But there we go.
No.
But I will say that, don't you see, when you watch Man of Steel, right, and Zod and his people were put into them space rockets and sent to the Phantom Zone, they look like giant dildos. They look very phallic.
I didn't think that at the time, but I'll have to rewatch that.
When you rewatch it, just look at them things. They look like, I don't know who designed them, and then someone signed off on them. Zack Snyder signed and said, yes, those ones there. Don't know why I like those, but I like those. They look like they've even got the scrotum on them as well. They could have, DC could have marketed them in adult sex shops.
Who knows? They may have already done. We might.
The DC dildo.
Yeah, dildo of steel. I don't know.
The Man of Steel.
Yeah,
they could have even made them metallic. There we go. It's going down a dark path.
So a bit more from Matt. He's sitting in his holiday cottage having breakfast, and I'm sure we all know this comment that he thinks Man of Steel is fantastic. Which I say, I do like the movie. I do like Henry Cavill. I'm now going to throw a right spanner in the works. Who is your favourite actor who has played Superman?
Well,
and why?
And why? I don't have to go beyond Christopher Reeve for that.
Okay, because he's the first. Okay, that's fair enough.
Well, but he's not the first. You had other actors.
He was the guy from the 60s, wasn't it?
Ironically, I've one of my upcoming videos is discussing this.
Okay, sorry. Plug AJ.
Yeah, I'm not going to say what video it is. It's pretty obvious. 30-day movie challenge. So Christopher Reeve for me, absolutely. I mean, he totally looks Superman from that era, 100%. And he understood what other Superman, no other Superman actor has given us a dual performance. Has given us a differentiation between Clark Kent and Superman. They've all pretty much played it the same, just put glasses on them.
Okay.
No one else has done what Christopher Reeve done there. There's the scenes in Superman 1. He does it in Superman 2, where he does it in front of the camera. He just goes from one to the other. Goes from one to the other. I think it's in Superman 2 where he runs down the alley, runs down a slope.
Yeah.
And in the alley, and then and even then, even in that moment, there's a change in his, I would say, in his stance, in his gait, his running gait, everything. There's a change between him running when he's dressed as Clark Kent to when the clothes sort of vanished, didn't they? I don't know what happens to the clothes, but they'll go. And he's then Superman before taking off. There's a complete change in the physicality. Isn't just him being a bit hunched and stood up straight. It's in every aspect and demeanor of what he does. And do you know what I mean? He is, hands down the best Superman. But then I don't have a problem with. All right, I mean, let me just run through them. And I was saying this: Tom Welling, I liked his performance as young Clark Kent. I had a lot of fun with Dean Cain in the 90s, Adventures of Superman, Lois and Clark, New Adventures of Superman. That show gave us a moonlighting vibe. Henry Cavill, he looked best in Man of Steel, build wise and topless. He didn't look the same. I don't know if he had, when he came back later, he looked bigger there than what he did at anything else. But he was, although the writing isn't Superman effectively, he was good. He gave something. And even like Tyler Hoechlin from Superman and Lois, I think he's great. I think he gives us a really good, strong performance as Superman, as and Clark Kent. But no, Christopher Reeve. Well, who's yours?
I was going to say. So when I think of Superman, I would always gravitate to Christopher Reeve because that's obviously my first interaction with him. But because I have to go on what I feel growing up, I would always go Dean Cain, and I know that's going to get a lot of slack from a lot of people who watch. Is going to be like, I see your point of that maybe he was very similar, but he was just the Superman I was introduced growing up as a teenager when I was getting into comics and stuff, and I think that always sticks more. I mean, Superman 1 was, I want to say 78, 79?
78.
78. So obviously I wasn't even born then. So even though, as I said, I was jumping on the sofa as a kid trying to fly, I'd probably watch those as somebody who probably didn't even take it in. So even though nowadays I appreciate, and I don't think we would have had a lot of Superman if it wasn't for him. I think the tagline, he showed that, or I can't remember the exact line is, he showed that a man could fly, or something.
You'll believe a man can fly.
Yeah. And I do think that, he is deserving of that. And, I do love his movies, even though it always is Dean Cain for me. And I know that will probably get a lot of slack. I said they all have their own merits. I think it's like Spider-Man and stuff like that. I can see certain actors have certain stuff.
I like Dean. No, I mean, I'm not going to knock Dean Cain because I loved Dean Cain.
Yeah,
Superman. I was. There's not one actor that I would say I don't like you as Superman. Okay. I was a bit questionable with Tyler Hoechlin at first when he popped up in the Arrowverse.
Yeah.
But I've grown to, I've seen him in some other stuff outside of as an actor outside of that as well, and I think he's great. And again with that, it's nice to see Superman in a different place.
Yeah,
shall we say? I think that's to show strengths in that it gives you Superman at a point in his life that we haven't seen him before, rather than going back to the beginnings and saying, "Here's Superman again." You're going to get exactly the same as what you've got before.
Okay.
So my question to you is interesting. Again, the side. Who's your favourite James Bond?
Who's my favourite James Bond? I mean, again, gravitate to who I know, so that'd be Pierce Brosnan, because obviously that's who I grew up with. Even though my dad would watch Sean Connery and stuff, that I'd watch him. I think I was just too young to take in everything that was going on, because I think I more gravitate to like Jaws or Odd Job or stuff, because they were the fun bits for me. Probably as a 10-year-old watching a man try and romanticize a woman, that probably went straight over my head. Blake trying to eat you with metal teeth. The only reason I asked that question is I want to see if you went the same route as what you do with Superman, as in the one that you were sort of introduced to and grew up with. But then it's always good, because I think even that, let's say with Superman, like you, I like all of them. I like aspect. I mean, a lot of people didn't like Brandon Routh. I forgot Brandon Routh mentioned. Yeah, I thought his version of Clark Kent was very much similar to Christopher Reeve. I don't think his Superman was that great, but I think what they did there was really good. And it just come, I think, unfortunately. Yeah, well, it was meant to be, wasn't it? Because it's a continuation of that, meant a continuation of that story. So, who's your favourite Batman? Before we do that, let's just get into some comments from Matt because he's quick, and then we'll go. Okay, so Christopher Reeve did a fantastic interpretation of Clark Kent. I think we can all agree with that. And then obviously he agrees with what you've said. And then says I'm a young woman. Unfortunately, between me, Matt, and AJ, there is about, I think, 10 years, give or take, maybe 11 for Matt if he's 51 now. So a little bit of an age difference, but I can still appreciate it. Okay, favourite Batman. I did think, I found this really hard thinking about it, because I mean, if I could pick out anyone that I like the best, it would be like the Nolan trilogy. But I don't know, because there have been so much memes and stuff of Christian Bale's Batman, it kind of dilutes my version of him.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. I mean, I did like the latest Batman, but I don't think he's been Batman long enough to sit on that plane. Then obviously with Keaton, I did like him in The Flash. I did like him as the original, but that Batman for me is very much not as dark as the Dark Knight should be, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and then obviously you've got was it the 60s with Adam West? That was just I don't know, fanfare Batman, you know, with his shark gun and everything.
Yeah.
That's where I would gravitate. But I mean, Batman is always a hard one, which is strange because for me, I love Batman as a character, and I always find Superman is a harder person to kind of get with, because I think when you have somebody who's a god, it's hard to relate to him. And I've never really bought much of his comics except for the crossovers like Justice League or Batman and Superman.
See, it's interesting you should say that, and I'll say this now before I come back to my thoughts on the Batman. But when you say that it's hard to relate to him because he's a god, this sort of a thing, this is DC's biggest issue.
Yeah.
When you compare DC to Marvel, in that, who can you relate with? What characters can you relate with in DC? Because Batman's a god. Oh, Superman's a god. Sorry, yeah. Superman's an
Batman
alien.
was a god. That's
yeah, Superman's an alien from another planet, with a power set that's that makes writing for the character extremely difficult.
Yeah,
not a very easy character to write for whatsoever. So you can't relate. Wonder Woman, an Amazonian princess.
Yeah,
there's no relation to her. You can't relate to her or anything she does there. Batman, a billionaire,
playboy.
Yeah, you can't relate to him, right? And this is DC's biggest problem, that you can't relate. Their characters are very fantastical and you can't relate. On the other hand, Marvel have always, they set their characters in the real world to start with. The other thing with DC is Metropolis, Gotham, Central City, all these fake cities. Yeah. But Marvel were like, no, New York, wherever it's based, New York. And their characters all have relatable traits, in the sense that, even characters that you might on face value you don't look like you can relate to, but even someone like Bruce Banner, you've got the anger issues, which is very relatable to people. Spider-Man, Peter Parker, and his the difficulties that are posed to him in life with jobs and work and girlfriend trouble and all that, relatable. Iron Man, they do the alcoholism or the dependency to something, again relatable. Fantastic Four, even them, they have this family dynamic between them, which is relatable to a lot of people. So Marvel have this tendency to create relatable characters with real world issues behind them, but DC are happy to give you these characters that you can't relate to whatsoever. And I think this is where DC, again, a drop for me, is that Marvel are happy telling you stories. I've read some fantastic runs of the Hulk. I forget who the writer was back in the day, but it was the Hulk. The Hulk was on the run. Bruce Banner was on the run, traveling across the country, people after him and helping people as he's moving on, much like what the TV series used to give us. And this was during the early 2000s or something. And it was a really great run. And the Hulk himself wasn't overly present in the comic. It was Bruce Banner, and only every now and then the Hulk came out. So you had that. But DC don't do that. DC is about Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman. It's not about Bruce Wayne. It's not about Clark Kent. It's not about their lives. I mean, this is even where the Zack Snyder films fall down for me, because the original Christopher Reeves, they were happy to include a lot of Clark Kent, and Superman came out in bits and pieces, and then for the end. But it's a reversal with DC now. It's more, let's put you in costume on screen all the time. And as a kid, from a child's perspective, when I first saw the first Superman film or grew up on it, I wanted him in costume. And that felt the same as a young lad watching any superhero thing. I want you in costume. I want you in costume. I don't want to wait to get you in costume. I want you in costume. Now it becomes it's that's what DC's giving you.
Yeah.
So are they aiming this squarely at the children because they're neglecting the alter ego character side of it? See what I mean?
I definitely.
I mean, when Man of Steel ended, Batman versus Superman ended, you essentially had Clark Kent dead.
Yeah.
And there was no Clark Kent. It was just Superman.
Yeah.
How would you bring Clark Kent back from that?
Well, I don't know. I mean,
you couldn't.
I mean, it's hard. It's if Superman is the overall being that they describe him as, I don't know how you would have a person whose moral fiber is to save somebody who could go, well, actually, there's 10 million things going on in the world, but I'm going to go to the Daily Planet today to see my future wife and hang out with them, because there's always going to be stuff going on, and he'd have to work like 24/7 constantly, which is a bit, it is. I mean, if you go back into the history, because I said I find it that interesting to this. There's like a 2-hour YouTube video with Ryan Reynolds narrates it. It's all about DC, which I found quite interesting to learn about. That is obviously when they came about creating DC and that, and like Joe Shuster, Jerry, all these people, or all the kind of sources like Bob Kane and that, they were very much not special in their own way, so to speak, and they're ideal people, like the Superman, the Batman, they're something they wanted to be. Like they always have Bob Kane dressed really, really smart and stuff, but he wasn't like a looker. He wanted to be a playboy, but he wasn't. And that's, as they were kind of the first people to create the comics, I think. Fortunately, when it comes to the comic side of things, because DC were first and did this, Marvel took a little time and went, well, actually, let's take this. This is a bit more, more relatable. Yeah. And that nowadays it works, which is strange, because if DC didn't do what they did in the comics and like the standards guys and everything, we wouldn't have Marvel or DC with these things. So I will go to your answers before Matt's put a few in, but obviously it might spoil what your answer is. So who is your favourite Batman then, AJ?
See, it's a difficult question, right? It's difficult because there's elements of particular ones that I like. It's easy to me. Whereas with Superman, I can say there's not a Superman I dislike. I can turn around and I can say I don't like Val Kilmer.
Okay.
Because I don't like Val Kilmer. I don't gravitate towards Val Kilmer as an actor whatsoever, right? At all. The only film I can say that I can ever watch and say, do you know what, you're really good in that, is Tombstone.
Okay.
The only film that I think he gives a fantastic performance and I like him in. Outside of that, I don't like Val Kilmer at all. So his casting... Sorry?
Heat?
Not particularly. It's a decent film, but I don't even remember it. I haven't seen it in such a long time. I don't even remember he's in it. To me, I know he's in. You got to remember, I didn't see the first Top Gun until the day before seeing that one.
Did you not?
No, because I don't like young Tom Cruise.
Oh, okay.
So I ignored young Tom. Or I did ignore young Tom Cruise films, but yeah. So I don't like Pattinson at all.
Okay. Yeah.
Batman. Very critical of that film. Okay, so Kilmer I like. No, not Kilmer. Sorry, Keaton. I said Kilmer. Kilmer I hate. Keaton I like. I'll come back to George Clooney. Affleck I like. Christian Bale I like to a degree. He is a bit over the top as Batman with his voice and that sort of a thing. Yeah, but George Clooney Clooney as Batman. See, I know a lot of people hate Batman and Robin, and I get that they hate Batman and Robin, but I don't think they understand why they hate Batman and Robin.
I think it's one of those films, it's so bad it's good.
Yeah, the problem is, it's like I've said this in chats before. Now, if Batman and Robin was your first big screen Batman film, I don't think you'd have had any problem. I don't think audiences would have had too much of a problem with it. If you reverse the releases of Batman, if you go Batman and Robin, then came Batman Forever, and then you went into the Keatons, I don't think there'd be too much of a problem, because screen-wise for Batman, all people had before the 1980s Batman was the 1960s Adam West Batman. Yeah. And Batman and Robin is more a step back to that era of Batman. So what you've done is DC has introduced audiences to the Dark Knight, essentially, with Batman and Batman Returns. Because you've got to remember, before Frank Miller came on to Batman, the Batman comics were very colourful, light, tongue-in-cheek kind of a affair. They weren't completely as dark as what they become. You know, Frank Miller was the writer, artist that gave us the Dark Knight as he came to be known. So if you reverse the releases, I think that Batman and Robin would have been better received. Yeah. Because what you've done is you've gone from darkness to try and now give me Adam West. And audiences didn't want that. No. Which then goes on to say, see, it's interesting because DC are giving you two versions of Batman, or they have at the moment. And this is where it becomes overkill, and this is where I've become somewhat disillusioned to the character. And I think that DC should take a step back and just don't give me any more Batman, please, for a long, long time, because you're giving me Pattinson at the same time as giving me Affleck. You know, you're not letting one rest. You're not, you know what I mean? You want me to take on several different versions of this character at once. And that's not including TV shows like Gotham that was on, and then, you know, and then Gotham Knights. And do you know what I mean? There's no rest for this character whatsoever. Animated films. But what I'm saying is those people that like Robert Pattinson and his take of Batman, that Batman film, after this trilogy or whatever of films, however many they're doing, comes to an end, I don't see what these general audiences that gravitate towards that want. Okay. What I'm saying is DC can't go any darker with the character, with the aesthetic of the films, with the grounded reality. I mean, for me, I think that film is so grounded that it highlights the absurdity of a man dressing up as a bat. Okay. That's what I take from it. That's why it doesn't work for me, because you want me, you know, as real world as the Nolan trilogy was, real world setting, there were still elements of fantastical built in. Yeah. The fantastical, but with the newer Batman, you've taken all of that out. You've taken any sense of fantasy out of the film whatsoever. You know, you've given me a grounded car even. Yeah. You know, which is just a real car just souped up. Whereas at least Nolan gave us this tank, this you know, absurd vehicle that, you know. Yeah, you've got this world that is just so realistic that the minute Batman turns up, I want to laugh. because it just shows the absurdity of you've taken the characters of the Riddler, you've taken the villains in this world, and you've created them, you've made them, you've even taken the fantastical out of them.
Yeah.
Right? The fantastical element out of them. You know, Riddler's now some sort of geezer in this gimp suit. But you expect me to believe that a geezer is acceptable dressed as a bat. It doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the other. I really, as I said, me and AJ had different views. I mean, I really liked it, but for my mindset it was the grounded realism, but it's a period that we never saw of Bruce becoming Batman. And I know, obviously, they covered it in the first Nolan movie, but for me, it was like, you know, he isn't a big playboy, so he doesn't have that presence. Everybody doesn't know who he is. So when he's on a cap, a jacket, and a motorcycle, he can go in and out of, you know, so no, and I quite like that because you never really have how he grew up. It was kind of, say, in the previous past, it was he goes away, he travels the world, he comes back, and he's magically Batman. You know, he isn't the world's greatest detective because he doesn't get what's going on with the Riddler until the very end. And obviously then he's struggling the same way when he's fighting on the girders in the stadium. Like, you know, somebody pulls a shotgun out and he just runs straight at it. Now, in most people's minds, you wouldn't do that. And he suffers it from it. And I think this is it, him learning. And I hope this trilogy is, by the end of it, at the very end, he becomes kind of the Batman we expect. And it is just, you know, he is flawed. He makes mistakes. And this is his kind of journey of, you know, learning that, okay, I'm not very good at being a detective. You know, I'm spending all my time building all this stuff, but I haven't got this presence as Bruce Wayne. And that's something I need to build up. And it's just, that's what I like to see, just something a little bit different and grittier. I mean, there are bits I didn't like Catwoman and that, but
yeah,
you can't.
So what about because I find it to be a very contradictory film.
Yeah.
In the sense that at the beginning, and when I started watching this film, don't get me wrong, when I started watching it, I thought this is really good. I like the sort of rain-swept look of Gotham that's given me. This is the opening scene. Yeah. I like that. I like that, you know, the bat signal's gone off and you've got all these petty criminals afraid of what's in the shadow. Yeah. You know, Batman's not even there and they're afraid of what is hidden in the shadows. And I thought that was fantastic. But then the film kind of contradicts this by putting Batman in public.
Okay, yeah.
In that, you know, okay, he's stepping into a crime scene with all of these police. I mean, it must have been the whole of the Gotham City Police Department
in that one
queued up either side of him, right? Yeah. So number one, a lot of these people are on the take because it's a you know what I mean, a crime-riddled city. Yeah. And, you know, all the coppers are on the take, or a majority of them. And Gordon meant to be one of the clean ones with a couple of others around him. So, number one, all these coppers that are secretly criminals are seeing him. And you think that word would just get out eventually that it's just a geezer in a stupid suit. It's just a bloke in a cosplay outfit. Right? Not only that, then he goes and knocks on the door of a club.
Yeah, I knew you were going to get
his Batman outfit.
Yeah.
And walks in and potentially, you know, you've got people there who are criminals going, just a geezer in a stupid outfit. Yeah. There's nothing to be scared of. Look at him. Yeah, do you know what I'm saying? There's that element to it I don't like. Now, later on in the film, there is a scene where he enters into a crime scene after the police have been there.
Yeah.
And he finds something, if I recall rightly. He then finds something that's been...
doesn't he? Yeah.
Yeah.
The carpet, yeah.
This is what should have been happening from the beginning of the film. That one change, that minor change, that he's not there with the police, but he's in after. Okay, I know you could say, well, the police have been all over it. He's missed, but it's just in the writing. It's just in the writing that he goes in and the police are incompetent, that he's found something that they haven't, that points him in the right direction, and you eliminate that that silliness of him entering a crime scene with all these police. Police who, if one of them's on the take, let's be honest, if one of them owes loads of gambling money, whatever, to the mob, and they say to him, if you get the opportunity to kill Batman, you kill him. Or, to get yourself out of debt. All you need is for one of them coppers to pull a gun out and bam in his face.
No.
It's that simple. Do you know what I mean? It's that element of the film that I can't get around.
No, I mean, you big interesting question with the gun thing. I mean, I say the mistake things. I think it's just his way of learning. I mean, like with anything, I'm sure that if he goes and beats up a group of 10 kids or whatever, or criminals, that story gets back to a load of people. It's probably, this massive beast of a person. And I think that's when we see the light come on, and why the Joker people are scared is because they've heard this story, and it's obviously got a lot twisted. And when you see like the fight, he's not perfect. They do, I think, get a few hits in on him and stuff like that, and he's not perfect. I think this is where he's making mistakes, like you say. He went to the nightclub and that, and obviously went to the crime scene, and his goal, I think, is just he's got this persona that he wants to do, and he's not thinking of the bigger picture. And I think that's where we will see evolution later on. But I mean, I say for the shotgun, I think there is, there are a few things you can easily point fault with, definitely. But I think he is just learning, because like anybody, I don't think even if if you even had the story of somebody wanting to be a giant bat, you're going to make mistakes. You're not going to know what works, and you're going to do. And I think this is just a very flawed story, so to speak. But I think for me, it worked really well.
No, that's cool. I mean, for me, I think that the last half hour can be chopped off the film.
It was a very long film. I do give it that.
Because I think, I'll be honest, I think that it would have been a far stronger ending if it ended at the point where he's with the Riddler. Riddler's in the cell.
Yeah.
And the bombs go off. And
not seeing the Joker.
Well. I don't need to see the Joker. Again, that's a character that's been, so many versions of it again recently that I don't need to see another version of it, especially when we've still got one that's active, essentially, in I know it's outside of the continuity and all that of this, but what I mean is that the whole ending of that film seems tacked on, the whole arena stuff and all that. For me, for my mind, a far stronger ending would have been he's facing the Riddler behind the glass. Riddler's won at that point.
Yeah.
Even though he's been caught, he's won because all these bombs go off. Gotham gets flooded, or parts of Gotham. There's loss of life. There's nothing that Batman can do whatsoever. He can't stop the flooding. He's not Superman. He can't save all the lives. And he has to, and it practically ends there with him having lost against the Riddler, essentially, to then go into the second one. I think that would have been far stronger, narratively a stronger ending for the film, to put him in that place for a sequel. And it would have shocked audiences as well. Like Batman ain't won. Batman's, as opposed to this ending scene where I have to see him fight wannabe Riddler cosplayers, essentially. A small element of people that are following them online. And, it's I don't know. That's just me. I mean, where are you hoping? Are you hoping that, who do you hope we get as the villain in the next? I don't know if there's any confirmation.
No, I don't think. I mean, to me, the point of he kind of lost it's all flooded. I quite like the look of that. I mean, I assume we're going to get a very almost end series of Gotham style city. There's going to be very few police. It's just going to be absolute chaos.
Yeah, no man's land.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that would be good. Maybe I don't know, because they've done so many people before. I mean, I like the odd villains and stuff like this. So I would be probably somebody like Firefly and a few other vigilante, like lower vigilante criminals, and have them just, the next movie, nothing, no major big villain, just he's trying to stop crime and stuff. I think that would be where I would want it to go. Whether that's right or wrong, that's,
Okay, what about if they gave you
maybe like Killer Croc if it's full of water? There you go.
Yeah, but this is where you start reintroducing the fantastical back into it that they didn't want in the first one.
Well, I mean,
does that character work?
Well, see, this is the thing. It depends, because Incarnation's only because one, he is like a genetic freak, so to speak, a sideshow. Which, if you based it off that premise, then there was some sort of circus to get away from the Joker. But if there was some circus with a bloke who did have some sort of weird skin condition and just had sharpened nails, that in itself could be a more realistic Killer Croc. Yes, it would be a little fantastical, maybe, if that's the right word. But yeah, that's kind of where I would want to go. It's kind of, Firefly, you've got jetpacks and stuff, which isn't kind of a real thing, but I suppose you could have drone related stuff linked in there. I don't know. But
what about if they gave you, because the talk of Mr. Freeze?
Arnold Schwarzenegger can make her.
Well, do you not think that he's a bit too fantastical? Because you've got the water element. Water leads to freezing.
Yeah, I suppose. With if a liquid nitrogen gun isn't outside the realms, I suppose, of possibility, because it would just be a device to spread. So, on that side of it, it would just probably be the person's condition himself. Would it be a just general scientist who has created this gun? And you would get away from his condition and his wife's condition. That's. It could work, but yeah, I think you would have to take away he has some sort of condition.
Yeah, see what I mean? So this is where it starts, where you start stepping out of what I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that as a Mr. Freeze, just a geezer with a gun, because then because you've already got your other characters that are like that.
Yeah.
In DC, what's his face in Flash? Captain Cold. Yeah. There's several Freeze villains in the sort of DC pantheon with guns. I know there's more than one. Captain Cold. There is someone else as well.
Heat Blast has a gun, but that's flames.
Do you know what I mean? So you start to. Yeah, you start to step into this realm of we can't really use this villain effectively.
Yeah, unless I don't know. Unless you have like a criminal organized, I don't know. Also, like I'm trying to think, a criminal organization, but they have some sort of high tech background, and it's about them outfitting just random people, and the whole film is maybe just like, oh, we've got this freeze gun, give it to Joe, he goes out, it doesn't work very well. Okay, we'll re-equip it, and they're kind of building it up to suit 4 people, maybe for the third one. Yeah, it is always going to be a hard one. I think with any comic book film in general, as you said, trying to get your vision across, and then having people's expectations, and obviously the comic book fans aren't really the most aren't really the nice pleasantest to people sometimes when something doesn't go how they want it to go.
No, I know they're not. But it's like I was saying, so Riddler works. Riddler works because he's just a normal man with high IQ more than anything else. Joker can work because he's just a psychopath. He ain't got nothing overly fantastical about him as a character goes. See what I mean? But when you come to things like Killer Croc, it starts getting into this realm of does it fit this world that we want to portray and create in this who's directed it? Is it Matt Reeves' film?
I think it's Matt Reeves again for the second
one.
Does
it fit that world?
Well,
a lot of these characters don't.
No,
because of the fantastical elements surrounding them. I think Mr. Freeze is I love Mr. Freeze as a character.
Yeah.
I think the animated film Batman Sub-Zero
Yeah.
is superb. I like the animated Batman, the animated series, their take on the character. Because I believe it was the comics that then, if I remember rightly, the comics then took that take of the character. It was the cartoons that gave who developed him into the sort of, because he's, you know what I mean, he's a relatable villain. He's not a bad person.
Yeah. No.
In the things.
Sorry, Matt left loads of questions and left. So let's go through them, and then we've got a morning, so I'll quickly go through them. So to go back, he liked Daniel Craig as 007 with Timothy Dalton, and a soft spot for Roger Moore.
So Dalton's my favourite.
Yeah.
I grew up on Moore.
And then obviously his favourite, I assume, is Michael Keaton, and then mentions, I think that's a joke, because obviously that was the first person you said you hated. Obviously, spoiler alert, but obviously George does make a cameo in The Flash, but I'm sure people know about that now, or if not, it ain't going probably anywhere. So it we'll quickly swap forward Michael's movie corner. Morning, Michael.
Hi, Michael.
Yep, just gone over 300 subscribers. I want to say 400. Sorry, apologies, 400. So yeah, if you come along. I've just recently subscribed to his channel, so I look forward to going through some of his content. I do like some of his toys in the background, so
he's making a killing on shorts at the moment.
Is he on shorts? Okay.
Yeah, you're doing well for him.
Yeah, and then obviously Matt left, said see you later, and then his last question to us was, do we think this reboot will work? So shall we segue from Batman into the Superman Legacy forthcoming 2025 movie?
Yes.
I mean, we're all over.
Go on, sorry, go on.
I mean, we're all a bit oversaturated with superhero movies. I mean, to me, it kind of, as we've spoken of them not taking their time, them throwing everyone. I mean, what we got: Hawk Girl, Guy Gardner. I want to say there's a few other people. I think there's already too many people hogging the limelight, and to go to what, you know, if they're restarting it, just have a Superman movie. Let's just learn about this character. Take your time to build him up, to get with him. Yes, maybe throw a person in there. And I think the only thing that gives me inspiration is with Guy Gardner, I assume maybe it's set in space. Maybe this is Superman from Krypton, and maybe it will end with him going to Earth. Maybe it will be a bit more, elongated of Man of Steel. It's all about Krypton. Superman's a child. But maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, for me, I'm like throwing all these people at it. It's just like you're diluting Superman's time, unless magically everyone gravitates to all these characters. But I mean, look at what Black Adam did. They threw a load of new characters in, and yes, they were good, but you just don't get enough screen time to relate to them, in my eyes.
See, I think DC are just making they're making a whole load of new mistakes. I don't get. See, I can't talk about what's to come without talking about what's been recently. I've got to address the fact that, again, they should never have announced the end of this universe of films and the start of a new universe of films.
Okay.
Right. I would never have done that. Because all we've seen along the way, and I said this in messages, is we've seen them trying to backpedal with every film that they've released. Right. Okay, so we got Black Adam out. Black Adam came, and it flopped.
Yeah.
All right. And this is a film headlined by Dwayne Johnson, and it's flopped. Right. After that, I knew there was no chance of Blue Beetle doing anything. If Dwayne Johnson can't save a film, then Blue Beetle ain't got a chance in hell. But we'll come back to that. So that came out, and it wasn't until after that and that flop that they announced we're ending this. We're starting again from scratch. But we're starting again from scratch, but we've still got Shazam 2 coming out. We've still got The Flash coming out. We've still got Blue Beetle coming out. We've still got Aquaman 2 coming out, right? Okay, so with each of them films, not so much with Shazam 2, right? But what happened was you had Black Adam come out, and this film, there's all that rhetoric surrounding it that this film is a new beginning for the DC universe. You know, Dwayne Johnson's here. He's going to, you know, even himself, he was a bit big-headed with it. He's going to save everything. He's going to save DC. He's going to save the day. You know, I'm saying I want Superman in this film. I get Superman in this film. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's all this stuff. And the film flopped. Right? Then Shazam 2 comes. Inevitably, it was going to flop, right? You're not going to get many take-ins on Shazam 2 if Dwayne Johnson's one has flopped before it, because it's the same character.
Yeah.
Right? Same power set. There's nothing different there. And that was part of the problem with Black Adam. Now, I enjoyed Black Adam. Don't get me wrong. I enjoyed Black Adam, right? And I did do a review for it. And I did say that I enjoyed this film, but I've seen it all before. Yeah. You've got Black Adam, there's nothing I haven't seen in Shazam there.
Yeah.
Right? Power-wise. You've got this giant guy, Atom, who looks like Deadpool.
Okay. Yeah.
They've used Deadpool's face and his eyes, and other characters as well. There's, like, do you know what I mean? Elements in it that I've seen that here. And that was the problem with Black Adam for me. But yeah, I enjoyed it. Right? Shazam 2 is a different story. Didn't really like it. But then after Shazam 2 flopped, you see DC backpedaling. They've backpedaled with every film, right? And this is what I'm saying. I don't believe a word of what they say. Because number one, they're saying with The Flash, we've got a Flash 2 script written.
Yeah.
Right? Flash 2 is ready to go, right? We haven't sacked Ezra Miller. We're considering keeping him around. Blah, 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 right? This is all rhetoric said to get you in the cinema, right? To save face, because they know that we've announced the new universe. We've killed everything else now because it renders everything else obsolete before it's even come out, right? So why should people go and see it? But let's try and get people in by saying that we've got a script for the second one. Maybe they did, but they're pushing it. We've got a script for a second one. Ezra Miller, we're happy to keep him on if it does the money, blah, 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 right? And it flops. Then comes Blue Beetle. You've got the same rhetoric with Blue Beetle, but different. Yeah? This character is going to be, and there are people, I see messages in group threads where people believe that this is the first film of the new DC universe. And it's not.
No, I think this goes off, not Zack Snyder.
James Gunn.
James Gunn, I think, has said in a tweet that the character will feature in the new one. And it leaves it very open. Right. I mean,
but why is he saying that?
I think it is like you. I honestly think this is more studio side. So
yeah,
if we wind back to where AJ's saying and before, obviously even back Wonder Woman 1984, I think so.
Yeah,
should be 1984. Yeah, and they hadn't had many hits since then.
No, just Suicide Squad. Yeah. The Suicide Squad flopped, but these were COVID hit films.
Yeah, obviously they did disown the Zack Snyder cut because obviously they wanted to kind of which is why it got released on HBO, I think, in the 4 parts. But I think the studio was in a downward spiral. Obviously, they took James Gunn on to do the Suicide Squad. Obviously, it did all right. I think it made him some money. I don't think it made loads. And then obviously they offered the job to him. Now I think him coming on board was like, what are you going to do? how are you going to save DC? And he was very much, I'm going to reboot everything. I'm going to do this, which at the time, the studio were probably like, that's great. Okay, we're glad you got a vision. Unfortunately, that got out. And then they realized, oh, shit, we've got like 6 movies coming out. How, that's going to hinder it. And I think that's, from the studio standpoint, they wanted James Gunn. They needed fresh blood. They needed someone to take a new direction, do something. But they didn't kind of think of the ramifications of that officially going out to then go, oh crap, we've got all. I mean, well, probably 7 if you want to Batgirl, because even that got written off before it was even. And it's I think that is again, like we've said before, they just don't think about stuff. They're trying to contend with stuff, and
they're trying to save the here and now. But like I said, they with Blue Beetle and the chat about this, it's not Blue Beetle's got nothing to do with James Gunn. Right. Fine. We will have, if Blue Beetle does well, we'll have Zolo, what's his name, in the new universe as Blue Beetle. But there would be no connection between that and this film here.
Yeah.
Right. This film isn't going to be connected whatsoever, which renders the after credits scene moot at this point. Right. Yeah. But my point is that it's all the rhetoric to try and get audiences to believe that there is something in this film for future worth, and there isn't, right? And now that they've given you the same rhetoric as what they did with The Flash, but different, if that makes sense. And they're doing the same with Aquaman 2, right? Aquaman 2 is now a film that apparently has no connection to anything. Right, you can watch it as a standalone movie. It's got no connection to anything that came before. It's got no connection to anything that's going to come after. So DC again are just trying a different tact to try and get audiences into it. Me personally, I don't understand why they didn't swap around Blue Beetle with Aquaman 2, the releases, because if you're true to your word and saying, well, Blue Beetle, we are going to include him in the new universe of films. Okay, well then move that before Superman. Move it with Flash. Have Flash come out before and let that do what it's going to do if that's going nowhere. And do you know what I mean? Then there's all this stuff about, Gal Gadot believing that she's been told that she'll be Wonder Woman in the new universe. And now, well, no, you've been lied to essentially by James Gunn. That's how it looks. And the same thing, there's no reason now. Okay, Blue Beetle's a flop, out and out flop, right? It's unfortunate. I know you enjoyed it. Me myself, I just found it to be not a bad film. I didn't find it to be a good film. It was background noise on the TV. It was uninspired, I think, but I just didn't gravitate towards it at all. Anything to do with it, and it's not Blue Beetle. This is endemic of superhero films as a whole for me. Very rare does one come along that now does something fantastic for me. I'm getting the same feeling from them all, that I've seen it all before, right? But if it's what I'm saying, that if Blue Beetle had done well, then I can see them possibly saying, okay, we'll keep him around as this character. He's done well. Audiences gravitated towards him. Why not? It's flopped. So now I wouldn't be surprised that you don't see him or have any. He doesn't come back as that character in the new universe.
No, that's
because it hasn't drawn audiences in. And I'm not saying, like I said, I'm not saying it's not bad. It wasn't a bad film. There wasn't, other than the family element that I felt was overdone and bringing the family on all the action end scenes, which I didn't really like. It's not a bad film. There's nothing in it that I will say that was bad. That I don't like that for this reason. But there's nothing in it that I can say I like that for this reason. It's just very much it exists and I watched it.
Yeah.
There's not much beyond that I can say about it. I've seen it all before. It's tired. It's a tired premise. Do you know what I mean? That's what I get from it now.
No, I think there's been so much out there that there's a bit hard to do a unique story that hasn't been done, and so I agree.
No, that's right. I mean, if I go back, right, Wonder Woman 2 didn't do much for me. I enjoyed the Suicide Squad.
The second one.
The second one, yeah, I thought that was a lot of fun. Yeah, I like James Gunn's great with these lesser characters because he can do. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just say I'm a little gutted for this movie. So James Gunn obviously was doing Guardians of the Galaxy, and he wanted to do an ensemble movie. Now, people who follow, I can probably say we were or are getting a Thunderbolts. That's the tattoo there. That's my favourite comic book series. That's what he was going to produce, and instead he went, because he got sacked, went and did this. So I feel like the Thunderbolts movie is going to be a big bag of poo.
Oh, yeah.
If James Gunn could do what he did here with the Thunderbolts, I think it would have been a really good movie. But I think Marvel were struggling.
Yeah, they are. But no, I think James Gunn is good. See, I'm not sold on James Gunn in the sense of you're now heading DC, right? And there's a reason being, right? When you give James Gunn a property like Guardians of the Galaxy or the Suicide Squad, what you're doing is you're giving James Gunn these characters that are not overly established very well, that are not followed in a massive way within the pantheon of the comics. So you've got the element of embellishing these characters to what you want them to be.
Yeah.
You can do what you want with them, and it doesn't really matter. You can't say the same about characters like Superman or Batman or Wonder Woman. They're established. They've got to be a certain way. But with these smaller characters, you can take them and I can do whatever I want with them. Do you know what I mean? I can have fun with them. And that's what James Gunn does. So I enjoyed the Suicide Squad. Yes. Black Adam, like I said, I had fun with it. But much like Blue Beetle, it was... I've seen it all before. Yeah. Wonder Woman 84 was not particularly good. Shazam 2, I've watched once and that's it. I did enjoy The Flash.
Yeah.
I enjoyed The Flash because it felt like I can watch it after Zack Snyder's Justice League.
Yeah.
It feels like I can sort of almost connect it to that in a sense, and it gives me a continuation of that a bit, and then a sort of a goodbye to that universe. So I enjoyed it in that sense. Not, I am very critical of the effects and that sort of a thing. I'm aware of its flaws. But yeah, so I don't know. I don't know where I was going with this. But I don't know why they didn't swap Blue Beetle with Aquaman 2. That's the bit that does, if you're honest, if you're serious about the potential of carrying this character into that universe, connected or disconnected from that film, do not have another film between them. Yeah.
I mean, my mind would only go to Amber Heard. I would only imagine that they just wanted to distance her and the court case from that, so they put it as far away as possible. That's the only reason I can logically do. They're like, the longer time that court case is over and done with, the longer people have forgotten about. Obviously, she's been cut from the movie. I don't think they've even reshot her scenes. I think that's it. They've just wiped her out, and so the editing might be a bit funky in places, but that's the only.
But that's fine then. It's even still. Hold off on Blue Beetle.
Yeah.
Push Blue Beetle another year.
We got a few more comments. Sorry.
No,
yeah. Fine. So to follow on, obviously, Michael has been doing really, really well. 70,000. Well, that's a lot of views with his shorts. So I've slacked a little bit of mine, so it's obviously a good one. We've got a few highs. So Luke's film unboxing. And we've also got HF Movie Productions. Morning. And then Michael has kind of agrees he should maybe just stop doing live action movies and just do with the animated ones. I would kind of agree with it. I mean, DC are all over the shop because obviously we know the movies are going to get, reshot in a few years. most of the series are now down the pan. I think what Lois and Clark is the last one.
Superman and Lois, yeah. There's a potential that will be picked up for a 5th season as well.
Yeah,
which is great news because they make money on it by selling it elsewhere because it's such a recognisable character.
Yeah, I mean the series have done good. I mean, obviously we go into Arrowverse and stuff. I mean, I do like the animated movies, but I think a few are hit and miss. They are.
I think now, in my mind, the animated movies have started tanking a bit. I think they're doing too many to start with, and also this is the other bit. It seems like DC are making the same mistakes within the animated movies as what they are within the live action films. In the sense that with the live action, you've got your universe movies, but then you've got these other movies popping up that are not connected to your in-universe films, right? And by which I'm talking, you've got your universe films, and you have Joker, you have the Batman. Do you know what I mean? You have things like that going on. The animated films are doing exactly the same, in that you've got your animated films coming along, which are linked to your new Tomorrowverse, I think they call it, a new universe. Yeah. But then at the same time, you're giving us Justice League Ruby, which isn't linked to that. You're giving us Batman the Doom that came to Gotham, which isn't linked to that, right? Which is fine, right? Because I think that to have something, me personally, this is what I would do. You've got your in-universe, your Tomorrowverse films, and then you have your Elseworlds.
Okay.
You have an Elseworld line at the same time. But my point is that you release something like the one which had Supergirl in it, which is a big element.
Is that the Brainiac one?
Legion of Superheroes, right? Which ended on a cliffhanger. Right, something happened to the main characters at the end of that, which then leads into Warworld.
Okay,
right?
yeah.
But between those, you're giving me something like Justice League Ruby Part 1. So essentially, you've given me a film that ends on a cliffhanger with something happening to these characters in Legion of Superheroes, which will continue on into the next universe film, which was Warworld. But between that, you're now giving me another film with a continuation as well. And as a general audience member, if I was someone who wasn't in the know, and I'm not overly, I don't follow the outside of the animated universe, in the sense that I don't follow what's going on, what they're talking about. A film comes out, I'll watch it. A film comes out, I'll watch it. So from a standard person's perspective, I'm like, what's going on? Why am I giving this with a continuation, and I'm getting another film with a continuation that isn't linked to this film with a continuation, to then later on get the continuation of this film, but I've got a couple of films in between that are not linked to this whatsoever?
Yeah, it is. I mean, the Ruby one, I think, is done by Rooster Teeth. From looking at the animation style, I think even, I don't know if you've seen, the second one is out or coming out soon.
It's coming out soon, yeah.
Which is obviously, they've now got, it's weird because you put the superhero in the Ruby world, and I won't say any more because I don't want to spoil anything of it.
No, I know that in this one, you've got the Ruby characters in the superhero world.
Yeah. But obviously, there's other stuff, isn't there? Obviously, I don't want to give away plot twists and stuff. I wasn't the biggest fan of that one. I'm a bit like you. I have kind of bit down. The Doom one was all right. I haven't seen. Is it Warworld or something? Is that the latest one?
Warworld's the latest.
Warworld. I haven't seen that one, so I can't comment that. But I mean, probably to Michael's thing, if they stop doing it, what happens if they did like a Justice League Unlimited movie series instead as an animated version? Do you think you could get behind that?
Who, me?
Yeah, like, because that's what he says. Like, what happens if, like, let's just stick to animated movies, but with the animated movies, why don't they actually do like a Justice League?
No, I agree. Yeah. I mean, there's times when I've watched animated movies and I thought, you need to get these people making your real films.
Yeah.
At least in the animated films, I get the death of Superman.
Yeah.
Done, given justice.
Right in return.
Yeah, followed by you know, the reign of the Supermen. I'd love to see the reign of the Supermen on the big screen. You know, the return of Superman and having, you know, Steel in there and the Eradicator Superman and the Cyborg Superman and the Superboy. I'd love to see that stuff.
All of them there.
You know, and I know that, all right, props to Superman and Lois, the TV show. Okay, they've given us Steel. Steel's a main character within that.
Okay.
John Henry Irons, but it's not, it's more of an Iron Man-esque. I ain't getting Steel how I want to see Steel. Do you know what I mean? I don't think that. I think DC. I wouldn't like to see DC not make live action films.
Yeah.
But I think that they need a break, and I think that they need. Like I said, I'm not sold on James Gunn doing it, because I think he's, you know, great. Like I said, give him some characters that no one knows. Do what you want with them, and he can give you something special. Give him Superman, Batman. I don't know what he can do with them. Yeah. So it remains to be seen.
No, I kind of agree. I think, yeah, he's a good storyteller. I will give him that. But I feel probably like you, when he's running a studio, so to speak, and other directors come on and writers and stuff, how influential he will be. I mean, he's no George Lucas, and we've even seen what George Lucas even has an active impact in some Star Wars stuff and how it ended. So do that. That's interesting. I don't think we have any more questions at this time. So okay, that's all right.
Michael's just popped up with another.
He's popped another one. They also need studios to leave. Totally agree with that. Too many times. I mean, if anybody knew the ins and outs, the original Justice League movie, it was only released in its version because the bigger higher ups wanted a bonus. So technically, Joss Whedon isn't totally to blame for the mess that we got, but he is partly.
Yeah.
But and then, if all these factors wouldn't have happened, we wouldn't have got Zack Snyder's version of his Justice League, which I think me and AJ have spoke about. Like, you know, that. Where is it?
No, that's right. I mean, to believe that, if anyone believes that the Zack Snyder's Justice League is what we would have got had events not occurred and Joss Whedon stepped on, it's not. It wouldn't have been. Zack Snyder had a lot of time to. Number one, you'd never got a 4-hour movie anyway. And Zack Snyder's had a lot of time to take on board the criticism of what's happened with the Justice League, and had time to think about, and you can be sure that along that way things changed in his mind, and he made changes that, well, this would work better than that, and you know what I mean? Things came into play, so it wouldn't have been. You'd have had something between the two.
No. I mean, I'd probably say this. I mean, when I first heard that Zack Snyder was going to do the Justice League, I was hoping it would be good. So obviously, for whatever reasons, we got the versions that we got. But I think a lot of people don't consider this, and I know a lot of people don't like the movie. But one of Zack Snyder's previous movies, obviously Watchmen, is essentially a kind of knockoff Justice League anyway, because that's how Alan Moore wrote it, and that's the whole premise of anybody who doesn't know. So Alan Moore is a writer. He comes from Northampton, where I'm based, quite fortunately. And obviously he wanted to do a Justice League, and DC said no. So he created technically his own versions of them. So obviously Owlman is Batman, essentially. Silk Spectre. Is it Silk Spectre? No, that's not Silk Spectre. They've all got, like, Dr. Manhattan is essentially Superman. Yeah. They're all like versions, so to speak. And I mean, if you watch that movie, and a lot of people don't like it, but there are fight scenes in the prison where Owlman and that go through, and I'm like, if you did this with Batman and Wonder Woman, it would look amazing. And then you go to the Justice League original version. I know Joss Whedon had inputs and stuff like that, but just the fight scene, there's hardly any fight scenes like that. And it's, but again, I think, I don't know. I mean, because Watchmen is such a standalone movie, you wouldn't have been able to gravitate, I think, to the characters as much as they did. But I still think if maybe he didn't make Watchmen and made that as a Justice League movie, that might have been a bit better. But
did you read Jeff Johns' Doomsday Clock?
No, I had a few series that was kind of linked, but I didn't, unfortunately. I heard good things, but
for anyone listening and want to know, that's a sort of continuation of Watchmen, where it comes together with the DC universe, because Watchmen was published by DC.
Yeah.
I do have it. I have it upstairs. Yeah.
There we go. I think has it got a DC marking on it? Mine might be an older one. No, it doesn't actually have DC written on it, funny enough.
Yeah, but it was published under.
Yeah, their titles and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have this?
No, the Death. So my introduction to that was a library book when I was in my teens.
Yeah.
So I don't have the Death of Superman in that sealed one, which was released.
What was this? 93, 94, 92?
90, I was going to say early 90s. But
so I remember when this came out. I remember going up into London for it. Now this is sealed, and inside, I'll show you what's inside because I've got an open one. So you get the comic itself, like so.
Yep.
Then you get a newspaper printing.
Yeah.
Definite Man of Steel. You get a trading card of the Gravestone. You get some what they call stamps or stickers. They're just stickers, but they're like stamps. They're perforated. All right. Then you get a massive poster for the Death of Superman and Funeral for a Friend, advertising what comes next.
Yeah.
Funeral for a Friend is what came between, obviously, Death of Superman and Reign of the Supermen. And you also get a black armband to mourn the death. I remember when this came out, and I went running up into central London, and I went around, I don't know, all the comic shops, and because you could only buy a couple, they'd only allow you to buy maybe two, 3 issues at a time, each, and everyone was buying these. I mean, it was in the news that Superman was being killed. This is the first time that something like this had occurred, and people were going in and buying this comic who weren't even comic book readers. Do you know what I mean? It was in the news, it was in the papers, and people were running into these comic shops and buying them. And within about 24 hours, this comic was trading hands for about 80 quid.
Jesus.
And everyone had bought multiple copies of it, including myself. I'd bought about 5-6 copies of it. They're trading hands for 80 quid, at which point everyone started selling them.
Yeah.
And as supply and demand works, they were selling them back to the comic shops or whatever for the comic shops to then sell them for 80 quid. But then as more and more became available, the price kind of dropped. And I think that's probably settled now over all this time. I think that can probably be picked up for maybe 15, 20 quid. Maybe cheaper. It was but that's what led to Nightfall as well.
The Batman.
Nightfall wouldn't have happened if this happened. And what happened was, the reason they'd done the Death of Superman storyline is because they knew that they were gonna marry Superman. They knew that they were going to do the storyline with him marrying Lois, which the TV series Lois Clark New Adventures of Superman tied in with, and they didn't have nothing for the year. They needed something to fill the void for that year between.
Well, it's funny you say that, because on the documentary that I watched, actually, so the story goes is that they had all gone in, they scripted out the year, then the wedding aspect come up, And then they were like, oh crap, he raced the whole year. And then we're going, well, what do we do? And one of the writers every year for like 10 years has said, well, why don't we just kill Superman off? It was a running joke with him. And he said it. And then in this meeting, because they wiped everything off, they all turned around and went, that's a good idea. Let's do that. I was like, yeah, as you say, such a big event it became.
Yeah. Totally. It was massive, but I still have, I'll show you. I have the News Time magazine, which is a fake magazine, essentially, from Metropolis, which is all about, you know what I mean, the death of Superman, as if you were there. Yeah. And I still have Wizard magazine, the tribute edition, again, all about Superman with a sort of nice metallic cover.
Cool.
Dug them out especially.
Nice. No, that's good. Cool.
Yeah, I was there for that event. Cool. It was funny because I met a mate of mine. My brother had a friend, and he was heavy into comics, really heavy into comics. And on the day going up into London, I was on the bus, and as I was about to get off the bus, he came downstairs from upstairs. I sat downstairs, said hello to him, and I said, "Oh, I'm guessing you're up here for the same reason I am," which was the death of Superman. And then after that, every week we would go up into London together and hit all the comic shops.
Oh, it's a good memory to have.
I don't know what's happened to him now, though. But there we go.
Michael's added another note, and because you've only got up at 9:30, you may not have seen this. So obviously, the original voice actress for Harley Quinn has passed.
I did see that, yes.
I
didn't read it. I just saw the headlines that she'd passed away.
Yeah, I want to say she was in her 60s now. And I mean, obviously, for people who don't know, obviously she played the original voice of Harley Quinn, which was from the Batman animated series, and that's where the character actually comes from. It wasn't from the comics. She was actually done as a sidekick for a kind of sidekick, a love interest for the Joker.
Yeah.
And obviously, you've seen how popular she is now, and obviously got her own. I think she's the only running animated series as well. I think there was a small short type series. I think they do series 4 or 5 of Harley Quinn.
But yeah, I'm watching it. It's on series 1, 2, 3. I think it's series 5 at the moment, 4 or 5 at the moment.
Okay.
22 minutes a piece episode.
Okay, so I haven't seen any of it. I don't.
I know they're very good. They're very good. They're very noisy. They're very. Oh, you know what I mean? They're very, very
in your face, like.
Yeah. But yeah, and obviously in that they have. You've got it's Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy.
Yeah.
They're the two, and they're lovers in it. They're you know what I mean. But it's pretty good. There has been a few episodes. There was one when Bane was, he basically grew big, massive, and he was running around humping all the buildings in Gotham. It was a Valentine's special, so he was. Yeah, it's a bit far out there. It's an 18. You know what I mean? It's not for kids. It's not kids. No. It's completely. But yeah, it's all right. It's all right.
Okay, that's cool. Right, well, we're about 10 minutes from the end.
But a question for you: so who's the first live action Harley Quinn?
Who's the first action
live action?
Well, it's not it ain't going to be Margot Robbie. It's probably going to be from like Arrow or something, isn't it? I would imagine.
No, it actually goes as far back as Birds of Prey TV series.
Never seen it, so I would have to take your word for it.
Mia Sara, have you seen? You've seen Ferris Bueller's Day Off?
Yeah.
You know the girlfriend?
Yeah, from her. Oh, she is it? Okay.
She's although she's not Harley Quinn. She's Harleen Quinzel.
Yeah, which is a psychiatrist. Yeah,
but she isn't the look of Harley Quinn. But she's the first live action actress to play Harley Quinn, and I think that was 2002.
Oh, okay. No, I mean I've heard of that series. I don't think they've ever released it in any physical media, so I've never.
Yeah, the Region 1 DVD.
Region 1. Oh, okay.
They do have.
I heard it isn't the greatest. but I.
No, it's not. It was all right for its time.
Yeah.
It was all right, only lasted one season.
But okay.
There you go. She was your first.
Well, at least we're learning stuff off this video. And so yeah, as we're into the last 10 minutes, I say, I know we haven't covered too much of the Arrowverse and stuff, but shall we end it with what is our favourite and our worst of DC's movies? Everything they've done.
But first, before that, have you read that?
Yes, back in the day. If it's
Batman versus Predator.
Yeah, Predator. And there was Batman's versus Aliens as well, I think I want to say.
There was indeed, yes.
And RoboCop.
Yeah, this was the first one that's the first crossover between DC and Dark Horse Comics.
Yeah.
Which actually really works. It works really well. They've done several. Batman Predator 2, Batman Predator 3. Have you seen Dead End, Batman Dead End? Which is a fan-made short, about 9 minutes, 8 minutes long on YouTube.
No, I've not, but I'm writing it down now.
Watch it after this.
Okay.
Batman Dead End.
Okay.
Seriously, it's 8 minutes long, 9 minutes. I've got it on a bootleg physical media upstairs on something with something else. It's worth a watch. Now, when you watch it, when they made this, people said that's the best big screen, or that's the best live action version of Batman I've ever seen.
Okay.
Right, and it came out before the Dark Knight trilogy.
Yeah. Before
Christian Bale's time. Take a look at it, seriously. You won't be disappointed. And it stars, there is not Batman himself, but another villain. There's a villain in it, and it's played by Walter Koenig, his son. You know, Chekhov, his son plays.
Yeah.
Take a look at that. But yeah, sorry. So what was the...
So I think I said end it out. Let's end it with our favourite and our worst DC movies, and a little explanation why I think. End it up. Go with worst, and then we'll end it with best if you want. That way we end it on a high.
My least favourite DC film.
Yeah.
Batman Forever.
Okay.
I can't get to the end of it.
That's Val Kilmer's one, isn't it? With Nicole Kidman and Tommy Lee Jones and Jim Carrey.
Yeah, for several reasons. Number one, like I said, Val Kilmer doesn't work for me anyway as an actor. I don't particularly like him. So there's that. When the film came out, I wasn't sold on any of the casting.
Okay.
Val Kilmer, obviously. Yep. Jim Carrey. I didn't want to see Jim Carrey as the Riddler. I wanted Robin Williams. I think he was born to play the character. I was sold on Tommy Lee Jones. I thought good choice for Two-Face. However, whoever's fault it is, it comes across as a second-rate Joker.
Yeah.
Nicole Kidman's pretty good in it, but I didn't like Chris O'Donnell as Robin. Okay. I find him much more bearable in Batman and Robin, but there's still elements of the performance I don't like. But where he's more Nightwing-y in that than Robin, that's probably my least favourite. But big budget. We're talking big budget films here.
Anything.
So I won't include things like Still.
That's what I was going to say. That's right. That would be my one.
But as big budget ones that people would know, not too many people would know Still. I would say Batman Forever. I have a lot of issues with.
Like I say, you ruined my Steel would have been my one. Just Shaq O'Neal as I think we both quite like the character of Steel, and it was unfortunately Shaq's done a lot of things in his career that are good, and unfortunately acting isn't one of them. So I it's just funny because if I do like Steel as a character, I think he's great. And I like the comic book look of the character with the red cape and the, you know what I mean? And I do think that whenever they discuss doing a black Superman, which I'm dead against, you don't take
Clark Kent and turn him into a black guy. You just don't do it. Same as you don't do it with James Bond, right? You don't do it. It's not a racist thing. This is how the character is conceived.
Yeah.
Leave him how he's conceived. If you want to do a black Superman, do still.
Yeah.
You know, Spider-Man done it with Miles Morales, fantastic character who I love and adore. And, you know, I will say that the animated Across the Spider-Verse or Into the Spider-Verse, is my favourite Spider-Man film above live action Spider-Man films. I'll take it every time above any of them. But still, if you want to do Black Superman, do something with that character and do it justice.
Yeah. John Henry Irons, I think, would be I mean, if you did his kind of backstory as well, I think, and his where his bloodline comes from would actually probably resonate with a lot more people. So I definitely agree.
Absolutely, yeah, totally agree.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, that's worse.
I do have a bootleg of I have an original copy of Steel on DVD. There's somewhere.
I've looked for it. It is quite expensive, so I'm not wanting to spend too much on what I know is a bad movie. But
yeah, I pick up every comic book movie, so I had to get it. So, what's my favourite? Superman the movie.
The original. Okay, Christopher Reeve. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll take that over. Yeah, because without that, I don't think you'd have anything else.
Okay, that's cool.
You know, I think that's proved the test of time as well. That film has proved to me that, you know, it still holds strong today. Whether I can say the same for a film that's made today in 40 years' time is another thing. Do you know what I mean? But when you got a film that's as old as that, as old as me, 78, I was born in 76. So you're looking at a 45-year-old film that still stands the test of the time. Yeah, I can't say the same for anything that comes today that will be, you know, in 40. Yeah, bloody hell, I won't be alive in that time. I'll be dead by then. But do you know what I mean? If when I'm sat around at 90 years old, 95 years old, saying, "Oh, bloody hell, the Suicide Squad," you know what I mean? The Suicide Squad's a fantastic film. Probably not. It'll probably be long forgotten.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So what's yours? Go on.
So I would put Superman second, and I would class this, but I would only. It's a strange one. So this would be my number one, but the only reason you would get this movie is if you had all of Lee's movies. So I treat franchises a little bit differently and stuff. So, you know, yes, it's a really good movie, but it's kind of the elements that came before it, and obviously the bad first Justice League movie and stuff. But I think just the grand scheme, because we're talking about DC, that I couldn't restrict it just to one character. I like this because there are so many characters, and I do like specifically Cyborg. I know the character or the person in real life is a bit screwed up. Like we got the Martian Manhunter at the end, if I can get my words out. So that would be. But as you've said, give it maybe 5-10 years. Superman is very much the Richard Donner, you know, but he's very much second place, and it could very much just swap back around again.
Yeah, I mean, I can't fault your choice there at all, because I love that film. You know, and the backstory, you know, and some of the best elements of that film are surrounding Cyborg.
Yeah.
You know, he wasn't done justice in Justice League, but in that he was. But anyway, before we go, I've got one question for you. Okay. If there's one project that you would like to see, whether it be live action, whether it be animation, is there something that you would a character or a story that you'd like to see adapted that hasn't been? Okay, all right. I've not read that.
So yeah, it's anybody who hasn't read it. This was kind of the second follow-on. So this follows the Teen Titans and I've got it all around. Outsiders and the Teen Titans. Now, Outsiders are basically a group formed by Batman. But basically, it's kind of a rogue agency that Batman just feeds them intel. Now, the Titans TV series has covered this version of Connor, and it is basically the Teen Titans and the Outsiders. They do their own missions. They go along a lot of bad guys. Then they team up, and along the way, they both have two secret agents that turn on them. Obviously, Connor turns into Lex Luthor, burns all his hair off, and then burns an L shape. And then this was an android who's actually a
descendant.
That's the word, Frank, of Brainiac. And she infiltrates the Outsiders, and they both go on this mad, basically tear him a new one. And it is a really, really good story. So that I mean, I know they've covered a few little bits from Connor in the Teen Titans TV series, but I think this was such a good series, and you never, when these twists turned, you never saw it coming. These two people were kind, and it's like someone flicks a switch, and then they just go rogue and just. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Invincible episode 1, if you've seen that animated series. It's somebody who you never would have expected just turns tan and starts wiping the floor with the whole team. What about you then, AJ? Let's end it. What one would you like?
I'd like to see an animated version of the unmade Nicolas Cage Superman movie. I'd like them to take that script and turn it into an animated. Just give us what, closest in animation, as close as you could give us. Just give us that. Christ, I mean, they could even get Nicolas Cage to.
I was going to say, he came back for, obviously, images for Flash, so I'm sure he'd be well up for it.
And he voiced Superman in briefly in Teen Titans Go as well.
Did he? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think in the film Teen Titans Go to the movies, I think he done a little voice snippet for that as Superman, if I'm not mistaken. I'd like, because that film was practically, it was all but made. The whole film was made, it just wasn't shot, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
To anyone, I mean, outfits were done, script was written, the film was ready to go. It was ready to start filming. They pulled the plug. And I'd love to see, as bad as it would be, still something that I'd love to see in whatever form.
I just know Kevin Smith's interpretation of that story. If you've ever seen, he does a stand-up, like an evening with Kevin Smith, and he speaks about that, and it's just his is like, oh, it's giant spiders fighting polar bears, and then he went on to make Wild Wild West. I was like,
the producer, so he finally got his giant spider. The producer was like a bit of a thingy. I want polar bears guarding the Fortress of Solitude. Something about the robot in the Fortress. I can't remember what it was about the robot in the Fortress of Solitude.
No, I can't remember.
I don't know if it was meant to be like a gay butler or something like that. The robot, and Superman must fight a giant spider. But I'd love to see it.
Yeah. No, well, we're just over the 2 hours. So thank you for the two people who have stayed and everyone else who's come along. Or if you're watching this from home, obviously, if you're following my channel or AJ channel, or if you're not following each or other us, please do tag along. Obviously, there'll be more of these. We do a new one every few months. Obviously, if you're watching this video, if you want to put suggestions for the next thing, we kind of make them up as we go along. So any ideas, what you would like to see? We have done previously Ghostbusters, Transformers, and whatever the third one was.
I can't remember what the third one
was.
Mask.
It was Mask was the first one. There's a good intro on that one. That was AJ pulled it out with his acting skills near the end.
Yes.
So.
Oh yeah, that was on the toilet. Yeah.
I
didn't even wipe.
Otherwise, thanks everybody for watching. So then we'll see you in the next one. AJ, stay on. We'll talk in the next one. But see everyone.
Take care all.